Hey, it's the last video of the whole class, so congratulations to those of you who made it. So this is going to be on phases, eclipses, and tides. Our objectives are going to be to explain the causes of the phases of the moon, to describe the solar and lunar eclipses, and to identify the cause of tides. So, what are the phases of the moon, and how do they happen? So the moon rotates around its axis and it revolves around Earth. Remember, it's 27 days for each, so we only see one same face of the moon. When people say the dark side of the moon, that is not true. It's just the side that we don't see. So really what it is we see the same face, and then that face changes due to the amount of light that the sun hits on that moon face and then reflects back to us. So, what are phases? They are when the moon looks different from Earth from the reflection of the sun's rays. A new moon is when no light is reflected. It's going to be like really dark, kind of. Then we've got a crescent moon, which is a new moon to a quarter moon. And that's when it looks like a little crescent. You can see just a little teeny bit of it. Then we've got a quarter moon, where half of the moon is bright to us. So half of the moon is bright, which means that a quarter of the moon is lit. Then we've got a gibbous, which is a quarter moon to a full moon. And then we've got terms waxing and waning. So waxing means growing and waning means shrinking. So an example for that is a waxing gibbous is a moon that's almost to full moon. It's going towards that full moon. And then a waning crescent is almost to the new moon. So it's already gone through its process of full moon, and then it's waning. It becomes a waning gibbous, then a waning quarter moon, and then a waning crescent moon, and then a new moon. And then that's when we get a waxing crescent, a waxing quarter, a waxing gibbous, and then a full moon. So here, just as a quick little, I don't know, you can't really read it very well, but looks like this is waxing. So we've got a waxing gibbous here, and then we've got a full moon, then we've got a waning gibbous where about 3/4 of that moon is lit up. Then we've got a third quarter moon, which is technically, some people call it a half moon. Then we've got a waning crescent moon, where most of the moon, about 3/4 of the moon is dark, where 1/4 of the moon is lit up. Then we've got a new moon, and then we go on from there to a waxing crescent. So 1/4 of the moon is lit up, it's getting more bright. Then we've got a waxing first quarter moon or half moon, and then that waxing gibbous to full moon again. So, what are solar and lunar eclipses? We just had a solar eclipse, which is like phenomenal. It doesn't happen very often. A solar eclipse is when the moon gets in the way of the sunlight that the earth is to receive. So, what happens then is we get these shadows. So we've got an umbra, which is a really dark shadow, which is where the total solar eclipse will happen. It was that really small line across the continental United States. Then we've got a penumbra, which is a lighter shadow, which you see a partial solar eclipse from there. So then a lunar eclipse is when the Earth gets in the way of the light that the moon is to receive. And this happens much more often because, first of all, the Earth is bigger than the moon. But secondly, the moon revolves around the Earth every 27 days. So we have a little more of a chance for that to happen. So it has an umbra and penumbra as well. So that umbra is where that dark total lunar eclipse is going to happen for this one, and then the penumbra is going to be a lighter shadow with a partial lunar eclipse. So here you go. This is right here. This is the solar eclipse where you see that corona, and then right here is a partial solar eclipse. So it didn't quite completely go over it. That's just due to the angle. And then right here on the left shows you how the umbra and penumbra happen. So right in here is the umbra, and that's because, as you can see, the sun's rays are striking the moon, and they're not hitting the earth. They're just getting like shadowed. So right in here, there's going to be no sunlight striking the earth, and that's where you get that corona around the moon right here. And so this was on our continental United States this year. It's not going to happen again until 2032, I believe. And then here we've got the penumbra, where some people saw this. So it's still pretty cool. And then here we've got the moon. And as you can see, the umbra, it encapsulates a lot more area. and then the penumbra as well encapsulates a lot more area. So you're just going to see a lot more of that lunar eclipse happening than solar eclipses. So here you go. Here's a total solar or lunar eclipse. You can't see any of the moon. There's like a little teeny bit. And then here's a partial lunar eclipse where right here you can see that shadow, that penumbra over the moon. And usually they're red in nature. They call them blood moons a lot of the time. So how do our tides happen? You know, a lot of people talk about the moon and the tides, and this is how you guys are going to figure it all out. It's going to be good stuff to know. So they happen because of the rise and fall of the ocean, and that's due to the gravitational pull of the moon and a little bit from the sun as well. So we've got the spring tide cycle, which this is a quiz question. It's going to have the highest high tides and the lowest low tides. So we've got a greater distance between tides. And then we've got our neap tide, which is pretty moderate tides. There's not this huge extreme of high tides and low tides. It's just pretty moderate tides. And that's when the moon is closest to the earth. The water's going to bulge out horizontally. So you can see right here, the moon is closest to the earth. The moon's going to pull with that gravitational force, and the tidal, the oceans essentially are going to bulge out so they bulge out that way and they bulge out this way. And this is due to centrifugal forces. It's that, remember how we said that the force of gravity goes along a perpendicular line, so that's just going to be that spinning force. And so here's the Earth, Moon, Sun positions in the monthly tidal cycle. So that's spring tide. We've got the highest high tide and the lowest low tide. That's when it's going to be closest, and it's just like coming, it's bulging right out to the sides here. And then we've got neap tide, which is just that moderate tidal range where it's bulging upwards. So here you go. First quarter moon correlates with a neap tide. Third quarter moon correlates with a neap tide. And then the new moon and the full moon correlate with the spring tides, and that's when they're closer to the Earth. It's closest to the Earth, excuse me. Okay, so that's all you're going to need to know. And this is going to be the last video, so I hope you all do very well in this class and have a great final and have a wonderful December break. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next class that you take for science. Hopefully it's mine.